The show of Helluva has become very Stolas focused, especially in the last few episodes. In the first real Stolas episode we got, Stolas' focus was not so much on Blitz, but on Octavia, and trying to keep their bond strong as he and Stella began their divorce. We got a little bit of Octavia in the Seeing Stars episode this season, but with us approaching what I believe to be the end of the first real plotline within Helluva, I have to imagine that she will be back soon with a real episode, maybe not focused on her, but with her being an important part of the plot. My name is ImpCut, welcome back to Cartoon Universe, and you all have been so nice this week. Thank you for that. Now, Octavia in many ways is the heart of Helluva. The show started as being about Blitz and his business, but that evolved to being largely about his relationship with Stolas. Now, that relationship is definitely what holds the show up, and without it, there's no real conflict, I would say. But Octavia is what I would say gives the plot its meaning, its heart, as I said before. Without Stolas' backstory from Season 2, Octavia was the only reason we really had to care about him. In the pilot, he was introduced as practically a villain before they seemed to transition him into being Blitz's love interest and a more sympathetic character. And Octavia was how they ended up pulling that off. Octavia was introduced in episode 2 of season 1, both as a joyful child and as an angsty teen, giving two sides of her relationship with Stolas. As a child, Stolas tried to be the father he never had, with Paimon rarely appearing in his life outside of formal occasions. Paimon had his own place in the Goetia, with Stolas being born to fill in a role below him, but Octavia was born as a precautionary heir to Stolas specifically, someone to replace Stolas if anything were to happen to him. As such, he was able to be in her life a lot more, but that doesn't mean he got it right when it comes to showing how he cares. The way Stolas shows how he cares is made up of two things. The first being copying what he thinks his father did right, and the second being making up where he thought his father was lacking. To make up for what his father was lacking, he made sure to be a regular occurrence in her life, actually living in the same house as her and treating her like a part of his family instead of some sort of formal employee. Like his father, however, he can still struggle to actually engage with his daughter. Because his father was never around, simply being in the presence of Octavia is what Stolas thinks he needs to provide, but as Octavia grows older, that isn't enough for her. As a teenager, he still tries to treat her like a child, placating her with simple fun and excitement, the way Paimon did with him. He takes Octavia to Lululand, a place she enjoyed as a child supposedly, but in the flashbacks we mostly see her horrified. This place is just what Stolas feels is similar enough to the circus that Paimon took him to. While he did end up enjoying the circus because it led to meeting Blitz, it's something Paimon expressed his own father took him to, making it a sort of toxic family pattern of placating your child with entertainment, particularly when you don't want to deal with their actual feelings. Paimon didn't want to deal with Stolas being upset that he had to marry Stella, and Stolas didn't want to deal with Octavia being upset that Stolas was divorcing Stella. In both cases, the circus was something that the father enjoyed more than the child, because it allowed them to remain blissfully unaware of their child's deeper issues, while actually addressing their own childhood trauma by going someplace that makes them feel like their own parent cared about them. Now, for Octavia, the trip to the circus, or rather Lululand, ended with her just running off and not putting up with her father, which forced Stolas to really try and talk to her. But even then, we see he is having a hard time. Stolas isn't some strong father who is holding back his feeling for his daughter's safety, but rather he isn't actually sure how to express himself in a way that is helpful to her. He tries, he stammers, and he fails, and all he can really tell Octavia is that he does love her. She accepts this, but as the series progressed, we find Stolas doing more of the same. By season 2, Stolas was ignoring Octavia now because of Stella, and that started to hurt her. As she said, she doesn't understand why Stolas hates Stella more than he loves her. This isn't necessarily true, the hate is definitely building, but that doesn't mean Stolas would let Octavia down in the important ways in life, even if the little things like the meteor shower she wanted to see feels like they're more important. Since then, Octavia has been staying with Stella and her family, which we know to mean Andrealphus and his icy palace. Growing up, Andrealphus probably had kept his distance from Octavia, but his interest in her likely grew after he realized that Stella was legitimately trying to have Stolas assassinated. Octavia is a precautionary heir, as we discussed before, and Andrealphus pointed out that if Stryker did kill Stolas, that his fortune would pass on to Octavia. Now, they are already rich and in the Goetia, so probably don't need the money all that much, but Andrealphus is also known from his real-life writings to have a knack for astrology. Stolas as a prince outranks Andrealphus, with Paimon making it clear that Stolas' primary duty is decoding the prophecies that exist in the constellations surrounding the Earth. Andrealphus, I imagine, wants to climb his way up the Goetia ladder, and this could be the only way for him to move up from his low level of Marquis to a higher level like Prince. If Stolas were to die as well as Octavia, Stella would inherit the fortune, and he might be seen as the best possible replacement for Stolas with his own astrological knowledge. With that in mind, it would seem that Andrealphus had Stella call off Striker so that he could kill Octavia first. With Octavia living with Andrealphus, I'm surprised this plot hasn't progressed sooner, but Andrealphus probably has to make sure it doesn't look as obvious as sending an assassin to kill her like Striker. Now, the exact way that Andrealphus would go about this, I have to imagine is something crazy that we can't even theorize about yet as the audience. Something possibly involving some new demonic royal lore that we just don't know to factor in yet. What I do know is that they've seemed to announce that they have a 4-season plan for the show, and in a Patreon Q&A we have permission to share that a primary plot will be resolved in Season 2, with Season 3 and 4 focusing on other plots that had already been set up. I have to imagine that the key plot being resolved will be the big Stolas and Blitz story. Not that it won't continue into Season 3 and onward, but that it will reach its end in its key points of drama. With that in mind, I have to think whatever Andrealphus has planned will come into play by the end of the season, but I don't think it'll be as simple as Andrealphus just trying to kill Octavia. Beyond whatever plans Andrealphus may have, he also seems extremely sadistic and manipulative. The way he just lets Stella believe whatever she wants while working towards his own plans to kill her daughter is pretty disturbing. I imagine that part of his plan would involve turning Octavia against Stolas first, and that wouldn't be surprising based on the trailer. In the trailer, we can pretty clearly hear Octavia say the line, "You never loved mother, and you never loved me, you only love him." This seems to be directed at Stolas, with her claiming that Stolas only loves Blitz. Now, obviously, Stolas loves Octavia, and we as the audience know this, but Octavia does not. More than anything, she doesn't have Stolas' backstory. The only reason we got the backstory as the audience was because Stolas blacked the hell out and regressed to his only comfortable childhood memory that he seemed determined to never share with anyone. And there is especially no reason that Octavia should know about it. Like the audience back in Season 1, Octavia thinks Stolas just met Blitz at some relatively recent point in history and started throwing away his entire life for him. Now, if she knew that Stolas had known Blitz since he was a child, that might seem to confirm to her that he never loved Stella, but I think it would teach her that it doesn't mean that he didn't love her. While she still would likely be confused and uncomfortable about their relationship, we already saw that she can be very forgiving of her father because she wants to love him, and seems to want him to be happy outside of just being her father. What Stolas' backstory would do is give her emotional context. Let her know that her dad was a person before her, and was a person before he met Stella, and that his love was never meant to be predicated on Stella. Right now, Octavia has a very childlike perspective of her parents. She doesn't understand the idea of them existing as separate entities before her, and their place in the Goetia only reinforce this. Octavia is the cautionary heir, as we keep saying, someone purposely born from someone that Stolas was purposely arranged to be with. The way Octavia grew up, she probably had the impression that Stolas really did love her mother, because he would be as loving as he could handle, not just for Octavia's sake, but even for Stella's and really his own. The fact that Octavia is still worried about whether or not Stolas ever loved Stella shows it was a big part of what she thought about her father, and the idea of Stolas running off with an imp is probably a lot more difficult to understand than the audience realizes, especially with only us having those flashbacks of Stolas' childhood. I think all this time at Andrealphus Palace, Stella and Andrealphus are probably making themselves out to be really affectionate and loving to Octavia, with Andrealphus perhaps doing this even more than Stella. Andrealphus may have his own wife and precautionary heir child as well, and if he's putting on an act of being a good father, this could make Octavia further doubt her relationship with Stolas. Right now, Octavia seems to be staying mostly with Andrealphus and Stella, and it's hard to imagine where they would meet up again if not in the episode where we see the Goetia and the 7 deadly sins gathering together. This seems to be the extended network of royals all coming for one big meeting, and precautionary heirs may be invited as well. In the recent trailer, we also see footage of what looks like Andrealphus going on the attack, and I have to imagine that whatever trickery he has planned is going to escalate into an actual battle. But what do you guys think? We haven't seen that much of Octavia this season, so this is just me going with what we have so far, but like I said earlier, I have to imagine there's going to be some big new information that comes into play that will make Octavia's story a lot more interesting and relevant. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys soon.